When you lie down tonight, your body will try to relax, but even on a soft bed, it will still shift, adjust, and search for a position without pain. That quiet discomfort is not a flaw of modern life. It is a trace of something much older. For most of human history, there was no soft surface, no stable support, and no way to avoid pressure building in the same places through the night. The ground pushed back against bone, joints stiffened without movement, and sleep was never completely separate from discomfort. The body did not wait for comfort to fall asleep. It learned to sleep while enduring it. If that pattern lasted for thousands of years, then some part of it may still remain. Why did humans spend so much of their history sleeping in pain? And what does that tell us about the way the body still tries to rest today? When the body prepares for sleep, it does not simply turn off. It shifts from movement into stillness, and that transition reveals something quiet but persistent. As long as a person is standing, walking, or even sitting, small adjustments happen constantly. Muscles engage and release in subtle patterns. Redistributing weight before pressure can build in one place. This continuous motion protects the body from lingering discomfort. But when the body lies down, that protection changes. Movement slows, and the same areas begin to carry weight for longer than they were meant to. The surface beneath the body, even when it seems flat, does not give way. It presses back. Over time, this pressure settles into the joints and the muscles surrounding them, especially along the back, the shoulders, and the hips. In the deep past, when humans rested directly on the ground, this effect was stronger and less avoidable. There were no materials to soften the contact, no layers to distribute weight evenly. The body met the ground directly, and the ground responded with firmness that did not adjust. The moment stillness began, pressure started to gather. This is not something the body evolved to avoid entirely. Human anatomy reflects a long history of upright movement, not extended rest on hard surfaces. The spine curves to support walking, the hips balance the body in motion, and the shoulders remain active in coordination. None of these structures were shaped with the expectation of long, unmoving contact against a rigid surface. So when early humans lay down at the end of the day, the body entered a position it could not fully support without consequence. The weight of the torso settled into a few narrow points. Blood flow in those areas slowed slightly under compression, and nerves responded with signals that we now recognize as discomfort or pain. This process does not require injury. It is a natural response to sustained pressure. In a modern setting, a soft surface reduces this effect by spreading weight over a larger area. But for most of human history, that redistribution did not occur. The body had to manage the pressure on its own. This often meant shifting position, even during sleep. Small movements, barely conscious, would relieve one area while transferring pressure to another. Over the course of a night, this pattern repeated many times. It is possible to observe a trace of this behavior today. Even on a comfortable bed, the body does not remain perfectly still. It turns, adjusts, and searches for a position that feels neutral, though that position rarely lasts. This suggests that the tendency to move during sleep is not simply a reaction to modern discomfort, but part of a deeper pattern. In earlier environments, where the ground was uneven and unyielding, this pattern would have been more pronounced. Each shift was a way to delay the accumulation of pressure in one place. Yet every new position introduced a different point of contact, and the cycle continued. Over long periods, the body did not eliminate this cycle. Instead, it adapted to it. Sleep became something that happened alongside these adjustments, not in the absence of them. The idea of lying down and immediately finding a stable, painless position is relatively recent. For thousands of years, the beginning of sleep likely included a period of quiet negotiation between the body and the surface beneath it. The body would settle, register the pressure, and begin to respond. In this sense, discomfort was not an interruption to sleep, but part of the process that shaped it from the very beginning of each night. As the body remains still, the initial pressure does not stay constant. It slowly intensifies in ways that are not always immediately noticeable. At first, the contact between the body and the ground may feel stable, almost neutral as weight settles into place. But over time, the absence of movement allows small imbalances to grow. The body is not perfectly symmetrical, and the surface beneath it rarely is either. Even a slight tilt or unevenness can shift more weight onto one side, one joint or one narrow area of muscle. In a living environment without prepared bedding, this unevenness would have been the norm rather than the exception. The ground might include compacted soil, scattered stones, roots just beneath the surface, or subtle slopes that are difficult to detect in low light. When a person lies down in such a setting, the body does not rest evenly. Instead, it adapts to the irregularities beneath it, often without fully resolving them. Over time, these small differences in support lead to a gradual concentration of pressure. A shoulder may begin to carry slightly more weight than the other. A hip may press more firmly into the ground. The lower back, depending on its natural curve, may either hover without support or sink too deeply into a hollow. These conditions do not produce immediate sharp pain, but they create a slow build-up of strain. Muscles that would normally adjust through movement remain in a fixed state, holding the body in alignment against gravity. This sustained engagement prevents full relaxation. The body remains quiet, but not completely at rest. In this state, circulation also changes. Blood continues to flow, but in areas under constant compression, it moves less freely. This does not stop circulation, but it alters it enough for the body to register a difference. Nerves in these regions begin to respond, sending low-level signals that something is being held too long in one position. In modern settings, these signals often prompt a person to turn over during sleep. In earlier conditions, the same signals would have been present, but the options for relief were limited. Changing position might reduce pressure in one place, but it would not remove it entirely. Another part of the body would take on the load. Over the course of a night, this process repeats, not as a series of conscious decisions, but as a pattern built into the body's response to sustained contact. The important detail is that this pattern begins not because something is wrong, but because the body is responding normally to a condition it cannot fully resolve. In environments where surfaces did not adapt to the body had to continually adapt to the surface. This creates a form of rest that is active in subtle ways. Muscles hold, release, and re-engage in small cycles. Joints remain aligned, but under pressure. The spine, designed for movement and balance, is held in positions that it does not maintain for long during the day. Over time, these conditions make it difficult for the body to remain in one position for extended periods without developing discomfort. This is not a failure of the body, but a reflection of the conditions in which it evolved. Sleep, in this context, was not a state of complete physical ease. It was a period in which the body reduced movement as much as possible, while still responding to the constraints of the environment. The stillness of sleep was therefore partial. Beneath it, small adjustments continued, guided by pressure, alignment, and the slow signals of the nervous system. Even today, when surfaces are designed to reduce these effects, the body does not fully abandon this pattern. It still searches for balance, still reacts to uneven support, and still moves when a position is held for too long. This suggests that the experience of discomfort during stillness is not entirely a product of modern conditions, but part of a longer history in which the body never fully escaped the influence of the ground beneath it. As the night continues, the body does not simply endure pressure and imbalance in a passive way. It begins to respond through a pattern that is quiet but persistent, a pattern of small corrections that never fully settle into a final position. These adjustments are not large movements. They are often subtle shifts, a slight turn of the shoulder, a gradual rotation of the hips, a repositioning of the legs to change how weight is distributed. Each movement reduces pressure in one area, but at the same time, it transfers that pressure somewhere else. In an environment where the surface does not adapt to the body, there is no position that removes pressure entirely. There are only positions that delay its accumulation in specific places. Over long stretches of time, this creates a form of sleep that is never fully stable. The body rests, but it also continues to manage contact with the ground. This pattern is not random. It follows the structure of the body itself. The spine, for example, does not remain completely still during sleep. It shifts in small degrees as the body turns, responding to the way weight settles along its length. The shoulders, which carry a large portion of upper body weight when lying on one side, begin to signal discomfort after sustained compression. The hips, as central points of balance take on pressure when the body rotates, and they too require relief over time. These signals do not always reach full awareness. They operate at a level that guides movement without waking the person fully. This allows sleep to continue, but it also means that sleep is interwoven with a continuous process of physical negotiation. In earlier human environments, where sleeping surfaces were irregular and unyielding, this negotiation would have been more active. The body would have encountered sharper contrasts in support, with some areas pressing more firmly against hard ground while others remained less supported. These conditions increase the need for movement because the imbalance becomes more pronounced more quickly. A stone beneath the shoulder or a slight elevation under one side of the torso can accelerate the buildup of discomfort. The body responds by shifting sooner, often before deep stillness can be maintained for long. This leads to a pattern in which sleep is divided into shorter intervals between movements. Each interval may be sufficient for the body to begin deeper stages of rest, but not long enough to remain there without interruption. Over generations, this pattern did not disappear. Instead, it became part of the way the human body organizes rest. Sleep does not require perfect stillness. It allows for movement, and in some cases depends on it. The presence of these adjustments suggests that the body does not expect to find a single ideal position that can be held throughout the night. Rather, it cycles through positions, each one temporarily reducing discomfort while preparing for the next shift. Even in modern environments where surfaces are more even and materials are designed to distribute weight, this pattern remains visible. People turn during sleep without remembering it. They adjust blankets, reposition limbs, and alter their posture multiple times through the night. This behavior is often seen as a response to discomfort, but it may also reflect a deeper expectation built into the body's history. The body does not assume that one position will be enough. It continues to search, even when conditions are improved. This suggests that the experience of sleep has long included a layer of ongoing correction, shaped by the need to manage pressure rather than eliminate it. In this way, pain and discomfort were not isolated events during rest, but part of a repeating cycle that began as soon as the body became still and continued quietly until morning. When the body settles onto the ground, it does not meet a uniform surface. What appears still and stable in low light often contains small variations that the body only begins to register after contact is made. A patch of soil may feel level at first, but beneath it there can be compacted layers, hidden stones, or slight rises that shift how weight is supported. These features do not need to be large to matter. Even a difference of a few centimeters can change how pressure is distributed across the body. In natural environments, such irregularities are constant. The ground forms through slow processes of erosion, plant growth, and compression, none of which produce flat or predictable surfaces. When early humans lay down to sleep, they did so within these conditions, without tools to reshape the ground or materials to create separation from it. The body had to conform to what was already there. This meant that each resting place introduced a slightly different arrangement of support and imbalance. A shoulder might rest against a small rise, lifting it just enough to shift more weight onto the opposite side. A hip might press into a firmer patch, increasing localized pressure while the surrounding areas remained less supported. The spine, which depends on balance contact to remain aligned, would respond to these differences by curving slightly in response to the surface beneath it. These changes are often subtle, but they accumulate over time. The body does not experience the ground as a single surface, but as a collection of points, each one interacting differently with bone and muscle. In this context, the idea of a neutral resting position becomes difficult to maintain. The body may find a position that feels acceptable for a short period, but as pressure builds and alignment shifts, that position loses its stability. This leads to the need for adjustment, not because the body is failing, but because the environment does not offer consistent support. In earlier human settings, this variability would have been unavoidable. Even when choosing a place to rest, individuals would have had limited ability to assess how the ground would feel over extended stillness. What seems comfortable for a moment while awake can change as the body relaxes and weight settles more fully into contact points. As muscles release tension, more of the body's weight transfers directly into the surface, revealing unevenness that was not apparent before. This process makes the first moments of lying down different from the deeper stages of rest. Initial comfort does not guarantee sustained ease. the ground continues to shape the experience of sleep long after the body becomes still. In addition to unevenness, the firmness of natural surfaces contributes to this effect. Unlike materials that compress and adapt, soil and stone resist deformation. They do not adjust to the contours of the body, which means that contact remains concentrated rather than spread out. This concentration increases the intensity of pressure in specific areas. Over time, these areas become points of strain, requiring the body to respond. The absence of a responsive surface means that the body carries the responsibility of adjustment entirely on its own. It must shift, redistribute, and realign without external assistance. This creates a dynamic in which rest is influenced continuously by the qualities of the ground. Even small features, such as a root just beneath the surface or a gradual slope, can alter how the body experiences stillness. These features are part of the environment, but during sleep they become part of the body's internal experience, shaping how pressure is felt and how movement is initiated. In this way, the ground is not a passive background to sleep. It plays an active role in determining how the body rests, how pressure builds, and how often the body must respond. For most of human history, this interaction between body and surface remained direct and unmediated, forming a consistent condition in which sleep unfolded within the constraints of an uneven and unyielding environment. Even when the ground appears relatively smooth, its structure beneath the surface continues to influence how the body experiences contact. Soil is not a uniform material. It contains layers that vary in density, moisture, and composition, and these variations affect how it responds to weight. A section of ground that feels firm at one point may compress slightly under pressure, while another nearby area may resist completely. This inconsistency changes how the body is supported, creating a pattern where some regions sink marginally while others remain elevated. The difference may be small, but over the duration of stillness, it becomes significant. The body does not rest evenly across such a surface. Instead, it is held in a position shaped by these subtle differences, often without the ability to correct them fully. In earlier human environments, these variations would have been common. Natural ground rarely maintains a single level of firmness across even a short distance. Factors such as recent rain, plant roots, animal activity, and the gradual settling of soil all contribute to a shifting surface. When a person lies down, their weight interacts with these conditions, revealing them through pressure and alignment. Areas of the body that encounter softer ground may sink slightly, increasing the angle at which other parts meet the surface. This can cause the spine to curve in response, placing uneven tension on surrounding muscles. At the same time, regions that rest on firmer patches may experience greater compression as the ground does not yield to distribute the load. This combination creates a form of support that is both incomplete and inconsistent. The body is neither fully cushioned nor fully stable. It exists between these states, adjusting continuously to maintain balance. As the body remains still, these imbalances do not correct themselves. Instead, they become more pronounced. Muscles that would normally stabilize posture during movement begin to hold static positions, working quietly to counteract uneven support. This sustained engagement prevents full relaxation, even when the person appears to be at rest. The nervous system remains aware of these conditions, monitoring pressure and alignment through a network of sensory feedback. Signals from compressed areas begin to accumulate, prompting small adjustments that shift the body into new positions. However, because the surface itself remains irregular, each new position introduces a different configuration of pressure and imbalance. There is no stable endpoint in this process. The body moves from one temporary arrangement to another, each one shaped by the underlying structure of the ground. Over the course of a night, this leads to a pattern in which rest is continually influenced by conditions that lie just beneath awareness. In modern settings, where surfaces are designed to minimize these effects, the body still exhibits similar behaviors. It turns, shifts, and seeks positions that feel more balanced, even when the surface is relatively uniform. This suggests that the pattern of adjustment is not solely a response to extreme conditions, but part of a deeper adaptation. For most of human history, the ground did not provide consistent support, and the body developed ways to respond to that instability. Sleep became a process that included ongoing correction, guided by the interaction between body and surface. The variability of the ground ensured that no position could remain comfortable for long, and the body learned to navigate this by remaining responsive even during rest. In this context, discomfort is not a disruption but a signal that guides movement, allowing the body to manage conditions that cannot be fully controlled. As the body continues to rest on such a surface, it begins to register not only pressure and imbalance, but also the limits of how much those conditions can be adjusted. There is a point at which movement no longer improves the situation in a lasting way. Each new position offers temporary relief, but it also reveals another uneven contact point beneath the body. This creates a quiet realization within the body's responses, not as a thought, but as a pattern. No position will fully remove the influence of the ground. In earlier human environments, this limitation would have been constant. The body could search for a better arrangement, but the surface itself remained unchanged. A small ridge beneath the shoulder might be avoided by turning, but that turn could bring the hip into contact with a firmer patch. A slight depression beneath the lower back might be reduced by shifting the legs, but that shift could increase the angle at which the spine rests. These trade-offs define the experience of lying on an irregular surface. The body is always balancing one form of pressure against another, never eliminating it entirely. Over time, this leads to a form of adaptation that is not about finding comfort, but about tolerating a range of discomforts that change throughout the night. The nervous system plays a central role in this process. It does not simply signal when something is wrong. It also filters and prioritizes sensations based on their intensity and duration. In a setting where discomfort is continuous but not immediately harmful, the nervous system may reduce the prominence of certain signals, allowing sleep to continue. This does not mean that the pressure or imbalance disappears. It means that the body adjusts its response to them, lowering the threshold at which they interrupt rest. In this way, discomfort becomes part of the background rather than a trigger for waking. However, this adjustment has limits. When pressure builds beyond a certain point, or when circulation is sufficiently altered, the signals become strong enough to prompt movement. The body then shifts, redistributes weight, and begins the cycle again. This pattern suggests that sleep, under these conditions, is shaped by alternating phases of relative stability and necessary adjustment. Each phase is influenced by the structure of the ground, which continues to impose its irregularities on the body. Over long periods, this interaction would have reinforced a mode of rest that is inherently flexible. The body does not commit to a single position because the environment does not support one. Instead, it remains responsive, even in states that appear still from the outside. This responsiveness allows the body to manage an environment that cannot be controlled or altered easily. It also means that the experience of rest includes an ongoing awareness, at a low level, of contact, pressure, and alignment. In modern contexts, where surfaces are more consistent and materials are designed to adapt to the body, this underlying pattern does not disappear completely. People still change positions during sleep, often without awareness, as if continuing a process that was once necessary for managing uneven ground. The difference is that now, the adjustments may be less frequent or less pronounced, but the tendency remains. This continuity suggests that the relationship between the body and the surface beneath it has long been a defining factor in how sleep unfolds. The ground, with its variations and resistances, shaped not only the positions the body could take, but also the way the body learned to move within stillness. In this sense, the uneven and unyielding nature of the ground did not simply create discomfort. It established a pattern of rest that includes constant adaptation, where the body never fully separates from the conditions that support it, and where sleep emerges not from the absence of pressure, but from the ability to endure and adjust to it over time. As the body remains in contact with the ground, the effect of pressure becomes more specific. It no longer spreads across broad areas in a general way, but begins to concentrate at particular points where the structure of the body meets the firmness of the surface. These points are shaped by anatomy. The shoulders, the hips, and certain parts of the back carry more weight when the body is lying down, especially when resting on one side or along a slight angle. In motion, these areas are supported by shifting patterns of muscle activity, but in stillness, they become fixed points of contact. The ground does not adjust to them, and so the weight of the body gathers there. At first, this concentration may feel stable, as if the body has found a position that can be maintained, but over time, the persistence of that pressure begins to change the way the body experiences it. The tissues beneath the skin, including muscle and connective layers, are compressed between bone and ground. This compression does not stop circulation, but it alters it. Blood moves through these areas with slightly more resistance, and the surrounding tissues receive less variation in movement and flow. The body is sensitive to such changes. It does not require damage to respond. Instead, it registers the duration of pressure and the lack of relief. Nerve endings in these regions begin to send signals that reflect this condition, not as sharp pain, but as a growing sense of discomfort that becomes more noticeable the longer it is held. In earlier human environments, this process would have unfolded without interruption from external support. There were no surfaces designed to distribute weight across a wider area. The body's contact with the ground remained direct, and so the concentration of pressure at these points became a defining feature of rest. Over the course of a night, these areas would experience repeated cycles of compression and release, each one tied to the body's small adjustments in position. The shoulder that carried weight in one position might be relieved when the body turned, only for the opposite shoulder to take on the same role. The hips would follow a similar pattern, shifting the central load from one side to the other. The lower back, depending on posture, might alternate between bearing pressure and remaining unsupported. This cycle does not eliminate pressure. It redistributes it across time. Each region of the body becomes, in turn, a point of contact that must endure a period of sustained load. The effect of this is cumulative. While any single period of compression may be tolerable, the repetition across multiple areas throughout the night creates a continuous presence of discomfort. This is not constant in intensity, but it is constant in occurrence. As one area is relieved, another begins to register the same pattern. The body moves through these phases without fully escaping them. This suggests that the experience of sleep in such conditions is structured around managing these points of pressure rather than avoiding them. The body does not find a position that removes all strain. It finds positions that temporarily reduce strain in specific places. In doing so, it creates a rhythm of adjustment that continues beneath the surface of sleep. Even in modern contexts, this pattern can still be observed. People often wake with awareness of pressure in particular areas, such as the shoulder or hip, especially if they have remained in one position for longer than usual. This indicates that the body continues to respond to localized pressure in ways that reflect its deeper history. The difference is that now, materials can reduce the intensity of these points by distributing weight more evenly, but the underlying structure remains the same. The body still has areas that bear more load during rest, and it still responds to sustained pressure in those areas by initiating movement. This continuity suggests that the concentration of pressure at specific anatomical points has long been a central factor in how humans experience sleep, shaping a pattern in which rest is interwoven with the ongoing need to manage the effects of contact between body and ground. As pressure continues to concentrate in these areas, the body begins to experience a gradual shift from simple contact into something more sustained and difficult to ignore. The sensation does not change suddenly. It deepens over time, as if the body is becoming more aware of the same point of contact the longer it remains unchanged. This is closely related to how the body manages prolonged compression. When a shoulder or hip presses against a firm surface, the tissues between bone and ground are held in a fixed position. Unlike during movement, where muscles contract and release in cycles, here they remain in a limited range, maintaining alignment rather than actively redistributing force. This creates a condition where the body is stable, but not dynamic. The longer this condition continues, the more the internal balance of the tissue begins to shift. Fluids move more slowly through compressed areas, and the slight reduction in circulation leads to a change in how the nerves in those regions respond. The signals they send are not sharp warnings, but they increase in persistence. They become more noticeable, not because the pressure has increased, but because the body has been unable to relieve it. In early human environments where sleeping surfaces offered little variation in support, this process would have been unavoidable. The body could not rely on external materials to reduce pressure at these points. Instead, it had to rely on time and movement. The delay between the onset of pressure and the need to respond becomes important here. At first, the body can tolerate the compression. The signals remain low, allowing sleep to begin or continue. but as the duration extends, the same level of pressure produces a stronger internal response. This is why a position that feels acceptable at the beginning of rest may become uncomfortable later, even if nothing has changed in the environment. The change occurs within the body itself, as its tolerance for sustained compression reaches a limit. When that limit is approached, the body begins to prepare for adjustment. This preparation is subtle. It may involve a slight increase in muscle tension, a shift in breathing, or a change in how weight is distributed across contact points. These changes often precede visible movement. They are part of the process by which the body transitions from one position to another without fully interrupting sleep. In many cases, the person remains unaware of these transitions. The movement is small, guided by the need to relieve a specific area rather than to achieve a new overall posture. Once the shift occurs, the previously compressed area begins to recover, and another region takes on the load. This cycle repeats across different parts of the body throughout the night. The important detail is that the body does not eliminate pressure. It manages it by limiting how long any single area must endure it. Over time, this creates a pattern in which discomfort is distributed rather than avoided. Each part of the body participates in this process, taking on periods of compression followed by relief. In modern environments, where surfaces can reduce the intensity of pressure, this cycle becomes less pronounced, but it does not disappear. People still change positions during sleep, often for reasons that are not immediately clear upon waking. This suggests that the body continues to monitor and respond to sustained contact, even when the conditions are more favorable. The persistence of this behavior points to a deeper origin, one in which the management of pressure was a central feature of rest. For most of human history, the body did not expect to find a position free from this process. Instead, it adapted to a form of sleep in which pressure would build, signals would emerge, and movement would follow, creating a continuous exchange between stillness and adjustment that allowed rest to occur within the limits imposed by the ground. As the body continues to move through these cycles of pressure and release, another pattern becomes more apparent, one that is less about the surface itself and more about how different parts of the body respond over time. Not all regions react in the same way or at the same speed. Some areas begin to signal discomfort earlier, while others can tolerate longer periods of compression before requiring adjustment. This difference creates an uneven rhythm within the body, where certain points reach their limits sooner and prompt movement that affects the entire posture. The shoulder, for example, often carries a significant portion of weight when lying on one side. Because of its structure and the way it connects to the upper body, it is more sensitive to sustained pressure. The tissues around it are not designed to remain compressed for extended periods without variation. As a result, it tends to reach a threshold of discomfort relatively quickly, encouraging the body to shift before deeper stillness can be maintained. The hips, by contrast, can sometimes tolerate pressure slightly longer, but when they reach their limit, the effect is broader, influencing how the spine and legs must reposition. This variation means that the body is not responding as a single unit, but as a collection of regions, each with its own timing and tolerance. In early human environments, where the ground did not provide consistent support, these differences would have been more pronounced. A slight change in the surface beneath one part of the body could accelerate the buildup of pressure in that region, while another area remained less affected. This creates a situation in which the body must respond not to a general sense of discomfort, but to specific points that demand attention at different moments. The result is a pattern of movement that is guided by the most sensitive or most compressed area at any given time. When that area reaches its limit, the body shifts. Even if other regions have not yet become uncomfortable, this shift then redistributes weight, often placing a new area under greater pressure, beginning the process again. Over the course of a night, this leads to a sequence of adjustments that is shaped by the changing needs of different parts of the body. No single position satisfies all regions at once, and so the body moves through a series of partial solutions. Each position resolves one set of pressures while creating another. This sequence is not random. It reflects the structure of the body and the way it interacts with the ground. Over generations, this pattern would have been reinforced, not through conscious learning, but through repeated experience. The body becomes efficient at recognizing when a region has reached its limit and initiating a shift that allows sleep to continue. This efficiency does not remove discomfort, but it prevents it from becoming overwhelming in any one place. It spreads the experience across time and across different parts of the body. Even in modern conditions where surfaces are more even and materials can adapt to body shape, this pattern remains visible. People often favor certain positions, but they rarely maintain them for an entire night. Instead, they move between them, sometimes returning to the same posture after a period of relief. This suggests that the body continues to operate according to a pattern that expects variation rather than permanence. The differences in how each region responds to pressure ensure that stillness cannot be sustained indefinitely without consequence. Instead, sleep unfolds as a series of adjustments, each one shaped by the timing and sensitivity of different parts of the body, all working within the limits imposed by contact with the surface beneath them. As the body settles into stillness, temperature begins to influence the experience of pressure in a way that is less visible but equally persistent. The ground does not only resist the weight of the body, it also draws heat away from it. This process happens gradually, often without immediate awareness, but it changes how muscles and joints respond over time. When the body loses warmth, especially through direct contact with a cooler surface, the tissues beneath the skin begin to behave differently. Muscles become slightly less flexible, and the ease with which they adjust to small changes in position is reduced. In a warm state, the body can shift with minimal resistance. In a cooler state, each movement requires more effort, and the range of comfortable positions becomes narrower. In earlier human environments, this interaction between body and ground would have been constant during the night. Natural surfaces, especially soil and stone, tend to remain cooler than the body, particularly after sunset. Without insulating layers to separate the body from the ground, heat would transfer outward, lowering the temperature of the areas in contact. This effect would be strongest at the points already carrying pressure, such as the shoulders, hips, and parts of the back. As these areas cooled, the tissues within them would become less responsive to subtle adjustments. The body could still move, but the movements would be slower to relieve discomfort, and the sensation of pressure would persist for longer periods. This creates a situation in which two processes reinforce each other. Pressure concentrates in specific areas, and at the same time, those areas lose heat and become less able to adapt. The result is not simply discomfort from pressure or cold alone, but a combined effect that deepens the experience of both. The body does not experience these factors separately. Instead, it registers them as a single condition in which stillness becomes harder to maintain. As the night continues, the loss of heat can extend beyond the immediate points of contact. The surrounding muscles may also cool, reducing their ability to support the body in a balanced way. This can lead to subtle shifts in posture that increase pressure in certain areas, even if the body has not consciously moved. In this way, temperature influences alignment, and alignment influences pressure. The interaction is continuous and difficult to isolate. In early human settings, where nights could vary in temperature and exposure, this effect would have changed from one environment to another, but it would rarely have been absent. Even in relatively mild conditions, the ground would still act as a surface that draws heat away from the body over time. Without materials to retain warmth or redistribute pressure, the body had to respond to both simultaneously. This often meant that positions that were tolerable at the beginning of rest became less so as the body cooled. A shoulder that initially supported weight without difficulty might begin to feel more rigid. A hip that rested evenly might become a point of increasing strain as surrounding tissues lost flexibility. These changes would not occur abruptly, but they would accumulate, prompting the body to adjust more frequently. In modern environments, where insulation and controlled temperatures reduce the loss of heat, the intensity of this effect is lessened, but traces of it remain. People may notice that certain areas feel stiffer or more sensitive after lying still in a cooler room. Even if the surface itself is comfortable, this suggests that the relationship between temperature and pressure is still active, even when conditions are improved. The body continues to respond to changes in warmth as part of its process of maintaining rest. For most of human history, however, this process unfolded without mitigation, making temperature an integral part of how pressure was experienced during sleep. It did not replace the effects of the ground, but it deepened them, shaping a condition in which the body had to manage both the firmness of the surface and the gradual loss of warmth at the same time. As the body continues to lose heat through contact with the ground, The change in temperature begins to affect not only muscles, but also the way joints behave during stillness. Joints rely on a certain degree of fluid movement to remain comfortable over time. When the body is warm, this movement is maintained more easily, even in subtle forms, as surrounding tissues allow small adjustments to occur with minimal resistance. But as temperature drops, this ease is reduced. The structures around the joints become less responsive, and the ability to make fine corrections in position begins to decline. This does not prevent movement entirely, but it changes how the body experiences holding a position. What might have been a neutral posture at a warmer temperature can begin to feel more rigid as the body cools. In earlier human environments, where there was little separation between the body and the natural surface, this effect would have been closely tied to the same areas already under pressure. The shoulders and hips, which serve as primary points of contact, would lose heat more quickly due to their direct exposure to the ground. As these areas cooled, the joints within them would become less adaptable to the ongoing need for adjustment. This creates a situation in which the body is still required to respond to pressure, but finds it slightly more difficult to do so smoothly. Movements that would normally relieve discomfort may become less effective, requiring larger or more frequent adjustments to achieve the same result. Over time, this increases the sense that no position can be held comfortably for long. The body may shift, find a temporary balance, and then encounter the same pattern again as cooling continues. This process also influences how long the body can remain in deeper stages of rest without interruption. When joints become less responsive, the signals that prompt movement can emerge more quickly, not because the pressure has increased, but because the body's capacity to adapt has decreased. The threshold at which discomfort becomes noticeable is lowered, leading to more frequent adjustments. In an environment where warmth is not retained, this pattern can repeat throughout the night, creating a rhythm in which rest is regularly interrupted by the need to reposition. Importantly, this does not require extreme cold. Even moderate differences between body temperature and ground temperature are enough to produce gradual changes in how tissues behave. The body is sensitive to these shifts, especially over extended periods of stillness. In natural settings, where surfaces do not store or return warmth efficiently, this effect would have been consistent. The ground absorbs heat from the body but does not provide it back in a way that maintains equilibrium. As a result, the body must compensate, not only for pressure but also for the changing conditions within its own tissues. This dual challenge shapes the experience of sleep in subtle but persistent ways. The body does not simply lie still and rest. It remains engaged in maintaining a balance that is influenced by both mechanical and thermal factors. In modern conditions, where insulation reduces heat loss and supports more stable joint behavior, the intensity of this interaction is reduced, but not entirely removed. People may still notice stiffness after remaining in one position, particularly in cooler environments or during longer periods of rest. This suggests that the relationship between temperature, joint responsiveness, and pressure remains part of the body's ongoing process. For most of human history, however, this relationship would have played a more direct role, shaping a form of sleep in which the body continually adjusted not only to the ground beneath it, but also to the gradual cooling that made each position less sustainable over time. As the night deepens, the combined effects of pressure and cooling begin to shape not only how the body feels, but how long it can remain in any one state of rest. The earlier phases of lying down allow for some degree of adjustment while warmth is still present in the tissues, but as heat continues to leave the body through contact with the ground, the balance begins to shift. Areas that were once able to tolerate pressure with minimal response now begin to react more quickly. The body does not suddenly become cold or uncomfortable. Instead, it enters a slower process in which each position becomes less sustainable than the one before. The shoulder that held weight earlier in the night may now feel less responsive, not because the surface has changed, but because the surrounding tissues have lost some of their flexibility. The same pressure produces a different sensation, one that is harder to ignore. In this way, cooling does not act as a separate discomfort. It alters the body's threshold for all other forms of contact. The signals that guide movement become more frequent, and the intervals between adjustments become shorter. The body is still capable of rest, but it must now work more actively to maintain it. In earlier human environments, this pattern would have unfolded without interruption. There were no stable sources of retained warmth, and the ground continued to draw heat steadily over time. This meant that the body could not rely on a single position to remain tolerable throughout the night. Even if a position was acceptable at the beginning of rest, it would gradually lose that quality as the body cooled. The result is a form of sleep that becomes more fragmented as time passes. Early periods of stillness give way to more frequent shifts, not because the body is failing, but because the conditions are changing beneath it. The interaction between pressure and temperature creates a moving threshold, one that the body must continually respond to. As the body shifts, it temporarily restores balance by relieving a cooled and compressed area, but the new position exposes another region to the same process, beginning the cycle again. Over the course of a night, this leads to a gradual redistribution of both pressure and heat loss across different parts of the body. No single area carries the full burden for long, but every area participates in the process. This distribution allows the body to continue resting, even though no position remains fully stable. It also reinforces a pattern in which movement is not a disruption to sleep, but a necessary part of it. In modern conditions, where warmth can be retained and surfaces can adapt to the body, the intensity of this pattern is reduced, but its structure remains. People may notice that they move more during colder nights, or that certain positions feel less comfortable as time passes, even without a clear external cause. This suggests that the body continues to respond to the same underlying factors, even when they are less pronounced. The persistence of this behavior points to a long history in which the body learned to manage rest within changing conditions rather than fixed ones. Sleep was not a static state, but a process shaped by the gradual interaction between pressure and temperature. As warmth diminished and pressure persisted, the body adjusted in cycles, each one allowing rest to continue within the limits imposed by the environment. In this way, the experience of sleeping in pain was not defined by a single moment of discomfort, but by a continuous sequence of changes that unfolded quietly through the night, guided by the body's need to adapt to both the firmness of the ground and the slow loss of heat that made stillness increasingly difficult to maintain. As the body continues to move through the night, a limit begins to appear, not in the environment, but in how long any single position can be held before it must change. This limit is not fixed, and it does not come from a single source. It emerges from the interaction of pressure, alignment, and temperature, each one gradually reducing the body's ability to remain still. At the beginning of rest, a position may feel stable, supported enough to allow the body to settle, but as time passes, the same position becomes less sustainable. Pressure builds at specific points, tissues lose some flexibility as heat is drawn away, and small imbalances in posture begin to accumulate. These changes are slow, but they move in one direction. They reduce the duration that stillness can be maintained without response. In earlier human environments, this limit would have shaped the structure of sleep itself. Without materials to redistribute weight or retain warmth, the body could not extend any one position beyond a certain point. It would begin to signal the need for change, first subtly, then more clearly until movement became necessary. This movement does not interrupt sleep in a complete sense. It exists within it, as part of the process by which the body maintains a tolerable state. A shoulder shifts to release pressure, the torso rotates slightly to adjust alignment, the legs reposition to balance the distribution of weight. Each of these actions extends the possibility of rest, but only for a limited time. The new position begins with the same conditions as the previous one. Pressure starts to build, temperature continues to influence the tissues, and the body enters another cycle with its own duration. This creates a pattern in which sleep is divided into segments, not by external interruption, but by the body's internal need to respond to sustained contact. The length of each segment depends on how quickly these conditions develop. On a more uneven or firmer surface, the limit is reached sooner. On a surface that allows slightly better distribution of weight, the limit may extend, but it does not disappear. The body does not find a position that can be held indefinitely. Instead, it moves through a sequence of positions, each one bounded by the same underlying constraints. This sequence is not consciously planned. It is guided by the body's sensitivity to duration. The longer a position is held, the more likely it is to produce signals that lead to change. In this way, time itself becomes a factor in how the body experiences rest. A position is not only defined by how it feels at the moment it is taken, but by how long it can be maintained before discomfort emerges. In early human settings, where nights could be long and conditions varied, this temporal limit would have been a constant presence. The body would have adjusted not only to the immediate qualities of the ground, but to the unfolding changes that occur with sustained stillness. Over generations, this pattern would have reinforced a form of sleep that is inherently dynamic. The body does not aim to eliminate discomfort entirely, because it cannot. Instead, it manages it across time, allowing each position to serve for a period before giving way to another. Even in modern environments, where surfaces and temperature can be controlled more effectively, this pattern remains visible. People rarely remain in one position for the entire night. They turn, adjust, and return to positions in a way that reflects an internal timing rather than an external signal. This suggests that the limit on stillness is not solely a product of difficult conditions, but part of a deeper structure in how the body organizes rest. For most of human history, this structure would have been more pronounced, shaping a form of sleep in which the body continually moved through positions, each one defined not only by its initial comfort, but by the duration it could sustain before the need for change emerged again. As the body continues to move between positions, the timing of these changes begins to form a pattern that is not entirely regular, but also not without structure. Each shift does not occur at a fixed interval, yet it follows a consistent principle. The body waits until a threshold is reached, then responds. This threshold is shaped by how quickly pressure builds, how rapidly tissues cool, and how evenly weight is distributed in the current position. When these factors align in a way that accelerates discomfort, the interval before movement becomes shorter. When conditions are slightly more balanced, the body can remain still for longer. In earlier human environments where surfaces varied from one location to another and from one night to the next, this timing would have changed constantly. A firmer ground might shorten the duration between adjustments, while a slightly softer or more even area might extend it. The body does not calculate these differences consciously. It registers them through sensation, adjusting its timing in response. This creates a pattern of sleep that is flexible rather than fixed. Some periods of rest may be relatively long, allowing the body to settle more deeply, while others are brief, ending as soon as pressure or cooling becomes too pronounced. Over the course of a night, these variations create an uneven rhythm, a sequence of stillness and movement that reflects the changing interaction between body and environment. Importantly, this rhythm is not designed for uninterrupted rest. It is designed for continuity within limitation. The body does not aim to remain motionless. It aims to remain asleep while managing the conditions that prevent complete stillness. This means that movement becomes part of the structure of sleep, not an interruption to it. Each adjustment resets the conditions temporarily, allowing another interval of rest to begin. But because the underlying factors remain unchanged, the process repeats. In this way, the body moves through the night as a series of connected segments, each one beginning with relative stability and ending with the need to change position. In modern environments, where surfaces are more uniform and temperature is more controlled, this rhythm becomes less pronounced, but it does not disappear. People still turn during sleep, often without awareness, and the timing of these movements can vary from night to night. This suggests that the body continues to operate according to an internal system that monitors duration and response, even when the external conditions are improved. The persistence of this system points to a long period in which such adaptability was necessary. For most of human history, the body could not rely on stable conditions to support extended stillness. It had to remain responsive, adjusting not only to immediate discomfort, but to the way that discomfort developed over time. This required a form of rest that could accommodate change without fully interrupting sleep. The result is a pattern in which the body is both still and active, resting while also preparing for the next adjustment. This dual state allows sleep to continue even as conditions shift, but it also means that rest is never entirely separate from the need to respond. The timing of movement becomes a quiet framework beneath sleep, guiding the body through a sequence of positions that together make sustained rest possible within the limits imposed by the ground. As these cycles of stillness and adjustment continue, the body begins to rely less on any single position and more on the sequence itself. No posture is expected to last, and no single arrangement of the body is treated as a final solution. Instead, rest becomes something that is built across multiple positions, each one contributing a portion of time before giving way to the next. This changes the way the body approaches stillness. Rather than seeking a state that can be held indefinitely, it settles into a pattern where movement is anticipated, even if it is not consciously planned. In earlier human environments, where the ground remained firm and uneven, this pattern would have been necessary. The body could not eliminate pressure or maintain warmth in a way that allowed for extended immobility. It had to distribute the experience of contact across different regions over time. Each position carried its own set of pressures and imbalances, and each offered only temporary relief from the previous one. Over the course of a night, the body would move through a sequence that gradually shifted these conditions from one area to another. The shoulder that bore weight early in the night would be relieved later, while another region took on that role. The hips would alternate in a similar way, and the spine would adjust its alignment with each change. This sequence does not remove discomfort, but it prevents any one area from carrying it continuously. In this sense, rest is not located in a single posture, but in the transition between postures. The body rests not because it finds a perfect position, but because it manages to avoid prolonged strain in any one place. This approach to rest has an important consequence. It means that sleep is distributed across time in segments that are connected by movement. Each segment may allow the body to enter deeper stages of rest, but these stages are reached and left repeatedly as positions change. The continuity of sleep is maintained not through stillness, but through the body's ability to move without fully waking. This creates a form of rest that is stable in its overall duration, but variable in its moment-to-moment structure. In modern environments, where surfaces are more consistent and materials can reduce the intensity of pressure, this pattern is less obvious, but it remains present. People often return to familiar positions throughout the night, revisiting them after a period of relief, as if following a sequence that the body recognizes. This suggests that the pattern is not purely reactive, but also predictive. The body anticipates that no position will remain comfortable indefinitely, and it prepares to move before discomfort becomes too strong. This anticipation allows adjustments to occur more smoothly, maintaining the continuity of sleep. The persistence of this behavior points to a long history in which such patterns were essential. For most of human history, the body did not have the option of creating a stable, supportive surface for rest. It had to rely on its own capacity to manage changing conditions. Over time, this produced a form of sleep that is inherently dynamic, shaped by the need to alternate between positions in order to sustain rest. In this context, the experience of sleeping in pain is not defined by a single continuous discomfort, but by a series of manageable intervals, each one limited in duration and connected by movement. The body does not eliminate the presence of pressure or cooling. It works within them, using time and sequence to create a form of rest that is possible, even when no single position can provide complete relief. As these sequences of movement continue across the night, the structure of sleep itself begins to take on a different form. It is no longer defined by a single uninterrupted period of rest, but by a series of shorter intervals that are linked together by the body's need to adjust. Each interval begins when the body settles into a new position and ends when that position can no longer be maintained without increasing discomfort. In environments where the ground remains firm and uneven, and where heat continues to dissipate through contact, these intervals tend to be limited in duration. The body enters a state of rest, but it does so with an underlying condition that is always moving toward its own threshold. When that threshold is reached, a shift occurs, and a new interval begins. This creates a pattern in which sleep is not continuous in a physical sense, even if it appears continuous from the outside. The body cycles through phases of relative stillness and necessary movement, each one shaped by the same constraints. In earlier human settings, this pattern would have been a regular feature of nightly rest. There were no stable surfaces to extend the duration of stillness, and no consistent insulation to maintain warmth at contact points. As a result, the body would move through multiple cycles over the course of a night, each one defined by the gradual buildup of pressure and the slow influence of temperature. These cycles do not fully interrupt sleep. The body remains in a resting state, but the depth of that rest may vary depending on how long a position can be sustained. Shorter intervals may allow only lighter stages of rest, while slightly longer ones may permit deeper states to emerge. However, because the duration of each interval is limited, the body does not remain in deeper states for extended periods without interruption. This leads to a form of sleep that is segmented, not by external events, but by the internal need to respond to the environment. The transitions between these segments are often subtle. The body shifts position, redistributes weight, and then settles again, continuing the process without fully waking. From the outside, this may appear as continuous sleep, but within the body, there is a repeating structure of beginning, sustaining, and adjusting. Over time, this structure becomes the way sleep is organized. It does not depend on perfect conditions. It operates within imperfect ones, allowing rest to occur even when stillness cannot be maintained indefinitely. In modern environments, where surfaces are designed to support the body and reduce pressure, these segments may become longer, and the transitions between them less frequent. But the underlying structure does not disappear. People still move during sleep, often several times a night, and these movements often correspond to the same need to relieve pressure and restore balance. This suggests that the segmented nature of sleep is not solely a response to difficult conditions, but a pattern that has been shaped over long periods of adaptation. The body does not require absolute stillness to rest. It requires a sequence of intervals that, together, allow for sufficient recovery. For most of human history, these intervals would have been shorter and more numerous, reflecting the limits imposed by direct contact with the ground. The body adapted by creating continuity across these segments, maintaining sleep not through unbroken stillness, but through the ability to move without fully leaving the resting state. In this way, the experience of sleep becomes less about maintaining a single position and more about sustaining a process, one that unfolds in stages shaped by pressure, temperature, and the body's ongoing need to adjust within the conditions it cannot fully change. As these shorter intervals of rest repeat through the night, the body begins to organize them into a pattern that allows continuity without requiring stillness. Each segment may be limited in duration, but together they form a chain that can extend across many hours. The body does not treat each interruption as a break from sleep. Instead, it integrates the need to move into the process of resting itself. This creates a structure in which sleep is maintained through transition rather than through immobility. The moment of adjustment does not fully separate one segment from the next. It acts as a bridge, carrying the body from one position into another while preserving a state of rest that is only briefly altered. In earlier human environments, where the ground imposed constant variation and pressure, this structure would have been necessary for maintaining any extended period of sleep. The body could not rely on long, uninterrupted phases of stillness. It had to work within shorter spans, linking them together through movement that did not fully disrupt the resting state. This suggests that the boundary between sleep and wakefulness was not always sharp. Instead, there may have been a range of states in which the body remained largely at rest while still responding to its surroundings. The adjustments made during the night did not require full awareness. They were guided by internal signals that prompted movement at the moment it was needed, allowing the body to shift position and continue resting without fully emerging from sleep. This ability to transition smoothly between positions is central to how segmented sleep functions. It allows the body to maintain continuity even as it responds to changing conditions. The depth of rest within each segment may vary, depending on how long the position can be sustained and how quickly discomfort develops. Some segments may allow the body to reach deeper states of rest, while others remain closer to lighter phases. Over the course of a night, these variations accumulate, creating an overall pattern of rest that is composed of many different levels. The body does not remain in a single state for long. It moves between them, guided by the timing of its adjustments. In modern environments where conditions are more stable, this pattern becomes less visible, but it continues to operate beneath the surface. People may experience longer periods of stillness, but they still transition between positions and between levels of rest. The persistence of this behavior suggests that the body is adapted not only to rest, but to rest in motion, maintaining sleep across a sequence of changes rather than within a fixed state. This form of continuity is different from the idea of uninterrupted sleep as a single block. It is more flexible, allowing the body to respond to pressure, temperature, and alignment without fully leaving the resting condition. For most of human history, this flexibility would have been essential. The environment did not provide a stable platform for prolonged stillness, and the body adapted by creating a system that could sustain rest through variation. Each segment of sleep contributed to the whole, even if it was limited in duration. The body learned to carry rest across these segments, linking them together in a way that preserved overall recovery. In this sense, sleep becomes a process that unfolds over time, shaped by the need to adjust rather than by the ability to remain still. The transitions between positions are not interruptions to this process. They are the means by which it continues, allowing the body to move through the night while maintaining a state of rest that is never entirely fixed, but always in quiet motion. As this pattern continues across the night, the body begins to rely on a kind of continuity that does not depend on unbroken stillness. Instead, it depends on the ability to pass through small changes without fully leaving the state of rest. Each movement, each shift in position, creates a brief moment of adjustment, but the body does not treat that moment as a complete interruption. It carries a sense of rest through the movement itself, allowing the next position to begin without a clear boundary between one segment and the next. This creates a form of sleep that is continuous in its overall duration, even though it is divided into many smaller phases. In earlier human environments, this form of continuity would have been essential. The ground did not allow for extended periods of complete stillness, and the gradual loss of warmth further reduced the time any one position could be maintained. Without the ability to move while remaining at rest, sleep would have been repeatedly broken into fully separate episodes, each one requiring a return to wakefulness. Instead, the body developed a way to transition between positions while preserving a low level of awareness that did not fully rise to waking. This state allows the body to respond to pressure and alignment without engaging the full processes associated with being awake. It exists between clear states, supporting the flow from one position to another. The movements that occur in this state are often small and controlled, guided by internal signals that do not require conscious attention. A shift of the shoulder, a slight rotation of the torso, or a change in the position of the legs can occur without disrupting the overall pattern of rest. These adjustments are enough to redistribute pressure and restore a temporary balance, allowing the body to continue sleeping. Over time, this creates a sequence in which each segment of rest is connected by movements that are part of the same process. The body does not need to fully restart sleep after each adjustment. It remains within it, moving through positions as needed. This ability to maintain continuity across change reflects a deeper adaptation. For most of human history, the body could not depend on stable conditions to support uninterrupted stillness. It had to function within a range of changing factors, including uneven surfaces, shifting temperatures, and the gradual buildup of pressure. The solution was not to eliminate these factors, but to integrate them into the structure of rest. Sleep became something that could persist even as the body responded to its environment. In modern conditions, where surfaces and temperature are more controlled, this pattern is less apparent, but it continues to operate. People often move during sleep without remembering it, and these movements rarely lead to full wakefulness. This suggests that the underlying system remains active, allowing the body to maintain rest across a series of adjustments. The continuity of sleep, therefore, does not depend on the absence of movement, but on the body's ability to move without fully disengaging from rest. This perspective changes how sleep is understood. It is not a fixed state that is broken by movement, but a process that includes movement as part of its structure. For most of human history, this structure would have allowed the body to rest within the limits imposed by the ground, preserving continuity even as each position reached its limit and gave way to the next. In this way, sleep unfolds as a connected sequence, shaped by the need to adjust, but held together by the body's ability to remain within a state of rest as those adjustments occur. For most of human history, the surface beneath the sleeping body did not change its shape to meet the body's needs. It remained what it was before the body arrived: soil, stone, grass, leaves, sand, packed earth, or some mixture of natural materials shaped by weather and use. This matters because the human body is not a flat object. It has curves, narrow points, heavy regions, and unsupported spaces. The shoulders project outward, the hips carry central weight, the spine bends along its length, and the neck requires alignment to remain at ease. When a body lies down, these differences become more important. A surface that does not adapt forces some parts to carry more pressure while leaving others without support. In the deep past, this mismatch would have been a normal condition of rest. The body did not lie on something designed around it. It lay on something that existed independently of it. This is one of the quiet differences between modern sleep and older forms of sleep. A modern mattress, blanket, mat, or cushion can respond to weight by compressing, spreading pressure, or filling empty space beneath the body. Even simple bedding creates a layer that reduces the direct conflict between anatomy and ground. But before such layers became common, the body had to solve the problem itself. It had to change position, tense certain muscles, release others, and search for arrangements that reduce strain for a time. The surface offered no assistance beyond whatever softness or unevenness nature happened to provide. A patch of grass might soften contact slightly, but it could not shape itself around the spine. Dry leaves might create a thin layer, but they would compress quickly under the hips and shoulders. Sand or loose soil might shift somewhat, but it could also create new angles that left the body uneven. None of these surfaces were built to hold the body in a stable, balanced posture through the night. This meant that sleep depended heavily on the body's own ability to adapt. The muscles around the back and pelvis could not fully relax if the surface left gaps beneath important regions. The shoulder could not avoid compression if the ground remained firm beneath it. The hips could not distribute weight evenly if the surface resisted pressure in one place and gave way in another. Each part of the body entered a negotiation with the ground, but the ground did not negotiate back. It stayed firm, cold, uneven, or only partly yielding. Over time, this shaped the experience of rest. The body was not simply resting on a surface, it was compensating for the absence of a surface that could adapt. This distinction is important because it helps explain why pain and sleep could exist together for such long stretches of human history. Pain was not always the result of injury, illness, or extreme conditions. Often, it may have come from the ordinary fact that the body was trying to sleep on something that could not support its shape. The natural world did not provide a perfect resting platform. It provided places that were good enough for temporary stillness, good enough for survival but not free from pressure. The body could rest there, but only by accepting a certain level of strain. Even today, when the surface beneath us is designed to be more forgiving, the body still behaves as if support is never guaranteed. It shifts, tests, and repositions through the night. That behavior becomes easier to understand when seen against a much older background. For thousands of years, the sleeping body did not expect the world beneath it to change. It expected to do the changing itself. Because the surface could not adjust to the body was required to supply its own form of adjustment from within. This did not happen through large movements alone. It also depended on a quiet, continuous engagement of muscles that prevented the body from collapsing into positions that would increase strain. When a surface leaves a gap beneath the lower back or does not support the curve of the neck, the body does not simply fall into that empty space without response. Muscles around the spine and along the sides of the torso begin to hold a slight tension, maintaining alignment where the surface cannot. This tension is not strong enough to resemble active effort, but it is also not the complete release often associated with rest. It exists between these states, allowing the body to remain stable without fully relaxing. In earlier human environments, where the ground provided little consistent support, this form of internal adjustment would have been present throughout the night. The body could not rely on external materials to fill spaces or distribute weight. It had to maintain its own structure against a surface that did not conform to it. This meant that even during sleep, certain muscles remained engaged at a low level, holding the body in positions that reduced the most severe forms of pressure or misalignment. The result is a form of rest that is partial. The body lies still, but not all parts of it are equally at ease. Some regions may relax more fully, while others remain subtly active, supporting areas where the surface offers little assistance. Over time, this uneven distribution of effort can influence how the body experiences stillness. A region that remains slightly engaged may begin to fatigue, even if the overall level of activity is low. This fatigue does not necessarily wake the person, but it can contribute to the signals that prompt a shift in position. When the body turns, it is not only redistributing pressure from the surface, it is also allowing previously engaged muscles to release, while others take on the role of support. In this way, movement during sleep serves multiple functions. It relieves external pressure and redistributes internal effort. The absence of a responsive surface means that both of these processes must be managed by the body itself. In modern environments, where surfaces can adapt to the body's shape, the need for this internal support is reduced. Materials can fill gaps, support curves, and spread weight more evenly, allowing muscles to relax more completely. However, the underlying pattern remains. People still experience areas of slight tension during rest, particularly when a surface does not fully match their body or when they remain in one position for an extended period. This suggests that the body continues to prepare for conditions in which support is incomplete. The persistence of this behavior points to a long period in which the body could not depend on external assistance to maintain alignment. Instead, it developed a system of internal adjustments that allowed it to rest while still holding its structure against an unyielding surface. This system does not eliminate discomfort, but it helps manage it, balancing the need for stability with the limits of the environment. For most of human history, this balance would have been a constant part of sleep, shaping a form of rest in which the body was never fully passive, but always engaged in a quiet effort to maintain its own support. As this quiet engagement continues through the night, the body begins to operate within a narrow range between full relaxation and active effort, never settling completely into either state. The absence of a surface that adapts to the body does not only affect posture and pressure, it also shapes how deeply the body can release its own tension. When support is incomplete, letting go entirely would allow the body to fall into positions that increase strain. As a result, the body holds itself just enough to prevent that outcome. This creates a form of rest in which relaxation is limited by the need for self-support. In earlier human environments, this condition would have been consistent. The ground did not provide reliable support for the curves of the spine or the distribution of weight across the body. Without materials to fill gaps or absorb pressure, the body had to remain partially engaged to maintain alignment. This engagement is not uniform. Some areas may be able to relax more fully if they happen to rest on slightly more forgiving surfaces, while others remain active to compensate for uneven contact. Over time, this uneven pattern of engagement influences how long any one position can be sustained. A region that is required to hold the body's structure will gradually approach its limit, even if the level of effort is low. This does not result in sudden fatigue, but in a slow increase in the signals that prompt change. The body responds by shifting, allowing previously engaged areas to release while placing new demands on other regions. This movement is part of the same process that manages pressure. It redistributes not only the contact with the ground, but also the internal effort required to maintain stability. In this way, the body cycles through phases of partial engagement and release, never fully relaxing all areas at once. The result is a pattern of rest that is continuous, but not uniform. Each position offers a different balance between support and strain, and each must eventually give way to another. In modern environments, where surfaces can adapt more closely to the body's shape, the need for this constant internal support is reduced. Materials can absorb some of the body's weight and maintain alignment without requiring as much muscular involvement. However, the body does not fully abandon its previous pattern. People may still notice that certain areas remain slightly tense during rest, especially when a position is held for longer than usual or when support is not evenly distributed. This suggests that the body continues to operate with an expectation that external support may be incomplete. The persistence of this behavior points to a long period in which the body had to rely on itself to maintain stability during sleep. Over time, this reliance shaped a form of rest in which full relaxation was rarely possible. Instead, the body maintained a balance between releasing tension and preserving structure, allowing sleep to occur within the limits imposed by an unyielding and unresponsive surface. In this context, the experience of sleeping in pain is not only a result of pressure from the ground, but also of the quiet effort required to hold the body together when the ground does not do it for us. As the body continues to hold this balance between relaxation and quiet engagement, another layer of activity becomes noticeable, one that is not visible from the outside but remains present throughout the night. Even when the body appears still, the muscles do not fully disengage. Instead, they maintain a low level of activation that supports posture, stabilizes joints, and prepares for the next adjustment. This state is not the same as daytime activity, where muscles respond to movement and external demands. It is a reduced, controlled form of activity that exists alongside rest. The body does not switch completely off. It shifts into a different mode, one that allows it to remain ready while conserving energy. In earlier human environments, where the surface beneath the body could not provide reliable support, this low-level activity would have been essential. Without it, the body would collapse into positions that increase strain, placing excessive pressure on certain areas or allowing joints to move beyond comfortable alignment. The muscles act as a form of internal support, compensating for the lack of adaptation in the ground. They hold the body in positions that are stable enough to maintain rest, even if they are not entirely free of discomfort. This creates a condition in which the body is never fully passive. It remains engaged at a level that is just sufficient to manage its own structure. Over time, this engagement becomes part of the normal pattern of sleep. The body does not expect to release all tension. It expects to maintain enough control to prevent imbalance. This expectation shapes how rest is experienced. A position may feel stable at first, but as the muscles continue to hold it, they gradually approach their own limits. This does not lead to sudden fatigue, but to a slow accumulation of signals that encourage movement. When the body shifts, it is not only responding to pressure from the ground, it is also allowing certain muscles to relax while others take on the role of support. This redistribution of effort helps extend the overall duration of rest, even though no single position can be maintained indefinitely. In this way, muscle activity becomes part of the mechanism that sustains sleep under imperfect conditions. It allows the body to adapt to surfaces that do not adjust, maintaining a form of stability that the environment does not provide. In modern settings, where surfaces are designed to support the body more evenly, the need for this internal support is reduced, but it does not disappear. People may still notice slight tension in certain areas when lying in one position for an extended time, particularly if the surface does not fully match their body. This suggests that the body continues to prepare for conditions in which external support is incomplete. The persistence of this low-level muscle activity reflects a long history in which the body had to remain partly active during rest in order to maintain alignment and manage pressure. It also explains why complete stillness is rarely achieved during sleep. Even in comfortable conditions, the body continues to make small adjustments, guided by the same underlying need to balance support and relaxation. For most of human history, this balance would have been more difficult to maintain, requiring the body to remain engaged for longer periods and to shift more frequently. Sleep, in this context, was not defined by the absence of activity, but by a controlled reduction of it, allowing rest to occur alongside a quiet, continuous effort to hold the body in a position that could be sustained for a time. As this low level of muscle activity continues, it begins to influence not only how the body holds itself, but how energy is used during rest. Sleep is often understood as a period of recovery, where the body reduces activity to restore balance after movement and effort. But when muscles remain slightly engaged throughout the night, this recovery is not complete in the way it might be on a fully supportive surface. The body is resting, but it is also maintaining a continuous, quiet output of energy to preserve alignment and manage pressure. This does not resemble exertion in the usual sense. The effort is minimal and spread across different regions over time. However, because it persists across many hours, it becomes part of the overall condition of sleep. In earlier human environments, where the ground did not adapt to the body, and where temperature and pressure required ongoing response, this pattern would have been consistent. The body could not enter a state of full muscular release without risking imbalance or increased strain. Instead, it operated within a narrower range, reducing activity while still maintaining enough engagement to support its structure. This means that rest was not defined by complete inactivity, but by a balance between lowering effort and sustaining control. Over the course of a night, different muscle groups would take on this role in sequence. As the body shifted positions, one set of muscles would release while another became more active, maintaining stability in the new posture. This distribution of effort allows the body to avoid prolonged strain in any one area, but it also means that no part of the body is entirely free from involvement. Each region participates in the process of maintaining rest, even if only for a limited period. The effect of this pattern is subtle but cumulative. While each moment of activity is small, the total duration across the night is significant. the body is not simply recovering from the day's movement, it is also managing the demands of the resting surface itself. In modern environments, where materials can absorb weight and maintain alignment, the need for this continuous engagement is reduced. Muscles are able to relax more fully, and the body can approach a state closer to complete rest. However, the underlying system remains. People may still experience slight tension or a sense of effort in certain positions, particularly when support is uneven or when a posture is held for longer than usual. This suggests that the body continues to operate with an expectation that it must contribute to its own support during rest. The persistence of this pattern points to a long history in which sleep occurred under conditions that required ongoing adjustment. The body adapted not by eliminating effort entirely, but by reducing it to a level that could be sustained over time. This allows sleep to fulfill its restorative functions while still accommodating the limitations imposed by the environment. It also means that rest is not a single, uniform state. It includes variations in activity and relaxation, shaped by how the body responds to pressure, temperature, and alignment. For most of human history, this variation would have been more pronounced, with the body continuously balancing the need to recover with the need to remain stable. In this context, sleeping in pain is not only a matter of external pressure or discomfort, but also of the quiet, ongoing effort required to maintain a position that can be held without causing greater strain. As this quiet use of energy continues across the night, it begins to shape how the body experiences recovery itself. Rest is still taking place, but it is not uniform across all systems. Some parts of the body are able to reduce their activity more fully, while others remain slightly engaged, supporting posture or preparing for the next shift in position. This creates a form of recovery that is distributed rather than complete in any one moment. The body restores itself in phases, allowing certain regions to relax while others remain involved, then exchanging these roles as positions change. Over time, this pattern allows recovery to accumulate, even though no single state provides full release. In earlier human environments, where the surface beneath the body required constant adjustment and did not offer consistent support, this distributed form of recovery would have been essential. The body could not afford to disengage entirely from its own structure. If all muscles were to release at once, alignment would be lost, pressure would increase in specific areas, and discomfort would rise more quickly. Instead, the body maintained a shifting balance, allowing rest to occur in parts while preserving enough control to prevent greater strain. This balance is not static. It evolves throughout the night as different areas respond to pressure, temperature, and duration. A region that has been engaged for some time may begin to release as the body shifts, allowing it to recover, while another region takes on a similar role. In this way, the body creates a cycle of partial recovery that moves across different systems. The effect of this cycle is subtle but important. It means that recovery is not tied to a single position or a single phase of sleep. It is spread across many transitions, each one contributing to the overall process. In modern environments, where surfaces can support the body more evenly and reduce the need for constant adjustment, this pattern becomes less pronounced, but it does not disappear. People may still notice that certain areas feel more rested than others, or that tension shifts from one region to another over the course of a night. This suggests that the body continues to operate with an expectation that recovery will occur in parts rather than all at once. The persistence of this behavior reflects a long history in which conditions did not allow for complete stillness or full release. The body adapted by creating a system that could maintain rest while managing the demands placed upon it. This system does not eliminate the presence of discomfort, but it allows the body to function within it, balancing the need to restore energy with the need to maintain structure. Over time, this produces a form of sleep that is layered, with different aspects of the body entering and leaving deeper states of rest at different moments. The continuity of sleep is preserved not because all systems are fully at rest simultaneously, but because the body is able to rotate the focus of recovery across its structure. In this context, sleeping in pain is not a complete absence of rest, but a condition in which rest is unevenly distributed, shaped by the need to manage pressure and maintain stability. For most of human history, this uneven distribution would have been a normal part of sleep, allowing the body to recover gradually while continuing to respond to the environment beneath it. As the body continues to operate within these patterns of pressure, movement, and partial recovery, the meaning of pain itself begins to shift. It is no longer only a signal that something is wrong or needs to be avoided. Instead, it becomes part of a range of sensations that the body learns to interpret in context. In environments where there are limited options for relief, the body cannot respond to every signal by withdrawing or stopping. It must decide which signals require immediate action and which can be tolerated for a time. In earlier human settings, this distinction would have been necessary during rest. The ground could not be reshaped easily, and positions that reduced pressure completely were not available. As a result, the body could not treat every sensation of discomfort as a reason to wake or move immediately. It had to filter these signals, allowing some to remain in the background while responding only when a certain threshold was reached. This process is not conscious. It operates through the nervous system, adjusting how strongly different signals are perceived and how quickly they lead to movement. A low level of discomfort may be present, but it does not interrupt sleep. Only when that discomfort increases beyond a certain point does it prompt a shift in position. In this way, pain becomes part of a system of regulation. It guides the timing of adjustments rather than preventing them entirely. Over long periods, this relationship between sensation and response would have shaped how the body experiences rest. Sleep would not have been a state free from all discomfort, but one in which discomfort is managed and integrated. The body learns to continue resting in the presence of certain sensations, maintaining a level of tolerance that allows sleep to proceed. This does not mean that pain is ignored completely. It means that it is interpreted in relation to duration and intensity. Short periods of pressure or mild discomfort can be absorbed without response, while longer or more intense signals lead to movement. This creates a layered experience in which multiple levels of sensation are present at once, some leading to action and others remaining part of the background. In modern environments, where surfaces are more supportive and conditions more stable, the intensity of these sensations is often reduced. However, the system that filters and interprets them remains active. People may still sleep through certain forms of discomfort, only becoming aware of them when they reach a higher level or persist for longer than usual. This suggests that the body retains a capacity to tolerate and manage sensation during rest, rather than requiring complete absence of discomfort. The persistence of this capacity reflects a long history in which such tolerance was necessary. For most of human history, the body could not eliminate all sources of pressure or imbalance during sleep. It had to function within them, developing a way to continue resting while responding selectively to changing conditions. This selective response allows the body to maintain continuity of sleep even when conditions are not ideal. It also means that the experience of sleeping in pain is not defined by constant awareness of discomfort, but by the body's ability to place that discomfort within a broader process. Pain does not always interrupt sleep. It can exist alongside it, shaping the timing of movement and the structure of rest without fully preventing it. In this way, the body does not seek a state without sensation. It seeks a state in which sensation can be managed, allowing rest to continue within the limits imposed by the environment. As this filtering continues through the night, the body does not simply reduce the intensity of sensation. It also changes the way those sensations are organized in awareness. Some signals remain clear and capable of prompting movement, while others become less distinct, fading into a background that does not interrupt rest. This separation allows the body to maintain sleep even when multiple sources of discomfort are present at the same time. In earlier human environments where pressure, uneven ground, and gradual cooling were constant, this ability to organize sensation would have been essential. The body could not respond equally to everything it felt. If it did, sleep would be broken into short and separate episodes, each one interrupted by minor changes in contact or alignment. Instead, the nervous system creates a hierarchy. Signals that indicate sustained compression or a growing imbalance are given more weight, while those that remain stable or change slowly are held at a lower level of awareness. This does not remove them, but it changes how they are experienced. They remain present without requiring action. Over time, this creates a layered field of sensation in which only certain signals reach the level that prompts movement. The rest remain part of the background, allowing the body to continue resting while still monitoring its condition. This layering also changes how the body prepares for adjustment. Movement does not begin at the moment discomfort first appears. It begins when the body recognizes that a signal has persisted long enough to require change. This recognition is based on duration as much as intensity. A moderate level of pressure that lasts for an extended period may be more likely to prompt movement than a brief increase in discomfort that quickly fades. In this way, time becomes part of how sensation is interpreted. The body does not react to every change. It responds to patterns that unfold over time. In modern environments, where surfaces reduce the intensity of pressure and provide more consistent support, this system continues to operate. People may remain asleep through minor discomforts, only adjusting when those sensations persist or increase. This suggests that the body retains its ability to organize and filter sensory input during rest, even when conditions are more favorable. The persistence of this system reflects a long period in which such filtering was necessary for maintaining sleep. For most of human history, the body could not eliminate the sources of discomfort it encountered during rest. It had to decide which sensations required action and which could be tolerated. This decision was not made consciously. It emerged from the way the nervous system processes and prioritizes signals. The result is a form of sleep that is guided by selective response. The body remains aware of its condition, but it does not act on every detail. It allows some sensations to remain in the background, while focusing on those that indicate a need for change. This selective awareness supports continuity, allowing sleep to proceed even when the body is not entirely free from discomfort. It also explains why movement during sleep often appears purposeful, even when it is not remembered. Each adjustment reflects the body's response to signals that have reached a certain threshold, shaped by both intensity and duration. In this way, the experience of sleeping in pain is not defined by constant interruption, but by a structured process in which sensation is filtered, organized, and acted upon only when necessary, allowing rest to continue within the limits imposed by the environment. As this system of filtering and prioritizing continues across many nights, the body gradually forms a stable relationship with discomfort that does not depend on removing it completely. Instead of treating pain as something that must always be avoided, the body learns to remain at rest while certain levels of sensation are still present. This does not happen suddenly. It develops through repeated exposure to the same conditions, where pressure cannot be fully eliminated and movement can only redistribute it. In earlier human environments, this would have been the normal context of sleep. The ground did not change in response to the body, and the body could not change the ground. Between these limits, the body had to find a way to continue resting without requiring the absence of discomfort. Over time, this created a range within which sensation could exist without interrupting sleep. Signals from the body were not ignored, but they were not all treated equally. Some remained in the background, while others rose gradually until they required a shift in position. This process shaped a form of tolerance that was not about enduring pain continuously, but about allowing it to exist within certain boundaries. When those boundaries were reached, the body responded, not by waking fully, but by adjusting and continuing the process of rest. This relationship between sensation and response becomes more refined over time. The body learns how long a certain level of pressure can be held, how quickly discomfort increases in different positions, and how to move at the moment when relief will be most effective. These adjustments become more precise, reducing unnecessary movement while preventing excessive strain. In this way, pain is not simply something that disrupts sleep. It becomes part of the system that shapes how sleep unfolds. It marks the limits of each position and signals the need for change, guiding the body through a sequence of postures that together allow rest to continue. In modern environments, where surfaces are designed to reduce pressure and support the body more evenly, this system remains in place. The intensity of discomfort may be lower, but the body still operates within a range of tolerance. People often remain asleep while experiencing mild pressure or slight misalignment, only adjusting when those sensations persist or increase. This suggests that the ability to sleep in the presence of some discomfort is not a failure of the body, but a continuation of a long-standing pattern. The body does not require perfect conditions to rest. It requires conditions that remain within a manageable range. The persistence of this pattern reflects a long period in which complete comfort was not available, and rest had to be maintained through adaptation rather than elimination of discomfort. This adaptation allows the body to remain flexible, capable of responding to changing conditions without losing continuity. It also explains why the search for a completely pain-free position often remains unresolved. The body is not structured to depend on such a position. Instead, it is structured to move between positions, guided by signals that indicate when each one has reached its limit. In this way, sleeping in pain is not defined by constant awareness of discomfort, but by the ability to place that discomfort within a system that supports ongoing rest. Pain becomes part of the timing of sleep, shaping when the body moves and how it maintains balance across the night. For most of human history, this balance would have been necessary, allowing the body to recover within conditions that could not be fully controlled, and preserving rest not by removing sensation, but by learning how to live within it. As these patterns of tolerance, adjustment, and distributed rest continue across generations, they do not remain only at the level of individual experience. Over long periods of time, they become part of how the human body is shaped and how it functions in conditions that are less than ideal. This does not mean that the body evolves to remove pain during sleep. Instead, it adapts to operate within its presence. Structures that support movement during the day must also function during rest at night, even when the surface beneath them is uneven and unyielding. The spine retains its curves, allowing balance and flexibility while upright, but those same curves create points of contact and gaps when the body lies down. The hips remain central to weight distribution during walking, but when resting, they become areas where pressure gathers. The shoulders, designed for a wide range of motion, carry load differently when pressed against a firm surface. These characteristics are not designed specifically for sleeping conditions. They reflect broader functions that must remain effective across many activities. As a result, the body does not become optimized for perfect rest on the ground. It remains a structure that must manage rest within the limits set by its primary design for movement. In earlier human environments, where sleeping surfaces did not adapt to the body, this mismatch would have been a consistent condition. The body could not reshape itself to eliminate all points of pressure, and the environment did not provide a stable solution. Instead, the interaction between body and ground remained dynamic, requiring ongoing adjustment. Over generations, this interaction did not disappear. It became part of the background conditions under which the body operated. The ability to tolerate discomfort, to move during sleep without waking, and to distribute pressure over time all contributed to maintaining rest in these conditions. These traits are not visible as distinct features, but they are reflected in how the body behaves. The persistence of movement during sleep, the sensitivity to pressure in certain areas, and the ability to remain asleep while adjusting position all point to a system that has been shaped by long exposure to imperfect resting conditions. In modern environments where surfaces are designed to support the body more evenly, these patterns remain. The body still carries the same structures, the same distribution of weight, and the same need to adjust over time. It may experience less intense pressure or reduced cooling, but it does not fully abandon the patterns developed under earlier conditions. This suggests that the relationship between the body and its sleeping surface is not something that can be entirely changed by altering the environment. The body continues to respond as it has been shaped to respond, maintaining a form of rest that includes adjustment and tolerance. The idea of a completely still and fully comfortable sleep may therefore be a relatively recent expectation, not fully aligned with the deeper structure of the body. For most of human history, sleep unfolded within constraints that could not be removed, and the body adapted by working within them. It did not eliminate the sources of discomfort. It integrated them into a system that allowed rest to continue. In this way, the experience of sleeping in pain is not only a reflection of the environment, but also of the body's long-term adaptation to that environment, shaping a form of rest that is resilient, responsive, and structured around the need to manage conditions that are never entirely ideal. As this long process of adaptation continues, it becomes clear that the body does not change in response to a single condition like sleeping on the ground, but must balance many demands at once. The same structures that experience pressure during rest are also responsible for movement, stability, and coordination during waking life. Because of this, any change that would reduce discomfort in one situation could affect performance in another. The spine, for example, maintains its curved shape because it allows the body to remain balanced and flexible while upright. These curves help distribute forces during walking and standing, but when the body lies down on a firm surface, they create uneven contact. The lower back may not fully meet the ground, while the upper back and hips bear more weight. This arrangement is not ideal for rest, but it supports a wider range of movement during the day. In earlier human environments, where survival depended on mobility, endurance, and the ability to respond quickly to changing conditions, the body could not sacrifice these functions to improve the experience of sleep. It had to maintain structures that supported activity, even if those same structures made rest less comfortable. The same applies to joints such as the shoulders and hips. Their design allows for a wide range of motion and the ability to bear load in different directions. This flexibility is valuable during movement, but it also means that when these joints are held in a fixed position under pressure, they may become points of discomfort more quickly. The body does not reshape these joints to eliminate pressure during sleep, because doing so would limit their function during the day. Instead, it maintains their versatility and manages the resulting discomfort through movement and adjustment at night. Over generations, this balance remains consistent. The body does not move toward a form that is optimized for a single condition, but one that can function across many. Sleep, movement, temperature regulation, and interaction with the environment all place different demands on the body, and it must operate within all of them. This explains why the body adapts by developing patterns of response. Rather than altering its structure to remove discomfort entirely, it becomes better at managing pressure, filtering sensation, and maintaining rest through change, rather than eliminating the causes of discomfort. In modern environments, where surfaces can be shaped to support the body and reduce pressure, this underlying structure remains. The body still carries the same curves, the same distribution of weight, and the same need to balance multiple functions. While external conditions can reduce the intensity of discomfort, they do not fully change the way the body is organized. People may still experience pressure in certain areas or the need to adjust position, even on supportive surfaces. This suggests that the body's design reflects a long history of compromise, where no single condition is optimized at the expense of others. The persistence of these features indicates that sleeping without discomfort was not the primary factor shaping the body over time. Instead, the ability to move, adapt, and function across varied environments remained more important. Sleep had to fit within that larger framework. As a result, the body developed ways to maintain rest within imperfect conditions, rather than eliminating those conditions entirely. In this context, sleeping in pain is not simply a limitation. It is a consequence of a system that prioritizes flexibility and survival across many different situations, allowing the body to function effectively even when rest is not fully supported by the environment. As this balance between movement and rest continues across long periods of time, the body does not move toward a single ideal form for sleeping, but remains shaped by a series of compromises that reflect many different demands. These compromises are not temporary. They become part of the structure itself, influencing how the body behaves even when conditions change. The same spine that supports upright posture and absorbs forces during walking still carries its curves into rest. The same joints that allow wide movement during the day must also bear weight when the body lies down. Because of this, the body does not arrive at a form that eliminates discomfort during sleep. It arrives at a form that can continue to function across varied situations, even when none of them are fully optimized. In earlier human environments, where sleeping surfaces were unprepared and often uneven, this balance would have been constantly present. The body could not depend on the ground to provide stability or support. It had to maintain its own alignment, while also preserving the ability to move efficiently when needed. Any structural change that reduced pressure during sleep might have introduced limitations during waking life. Over generations, this created a condition in which the body remained versatile rather than specialized. It could walk, carry, bend, and respond to the environment, but it could not lie down without encountering points of pressure or imbalance. This is not because the body failed to adapt. It is because the body adapted in a way that preserved its broader function. Sleep, in this context, had to occur within the limits set by that broader function. The body did not become more comfortable in a single position. It became more capable of adjusting between positions, distributing discomfort across time, and maintaining rest despite the presence of pressure. This adaptation is reflected in behavior as much as in structure. The tendency to shift during sleep, the ability to remain asleep while moving, and the sensitivity to prolonged pressure all point to a system that manages rest dynamically. These traits do not remove discomfort, they organize it, allowing the body to continue resting even when conditions are not ideal. In modern environments, where surfaces are designed to support the body and reduce these effects, the underlying structure remains unchanged. The body still carries the same curves, the same joint ranges, and the same distribution of weight. External improvements can reduce the intensity of discomfort, but they do not fully align with the body's deeper design. This is why, even on a soft surface, the body may continue to shift, searching for a position that feels more balanced. The expectation of perfect stillness does not match the structure that has developed over time. The persistence of this mismatch suggests that the body is not designed to eliminate discomfort during sleep, but to manage it while maintaining its ability to function in other contexts. For most of human history, this management would have been essential. The body had to remain ready for movement, capable of responding to its surroundings, even after periods of rest. It could not afford to become specialized for a single static condition. As a result, sleep became something that fit within a larger system of demands, shaped by compromise rather than optimization. In this way, sleeping in pain is not an isolated feature of the past, but a reflection of how the body has been shaped to operate across many conditions at once, preserving flexibility and function even when rest is not fully supported. As external conditions began to change over time, the surface beneath the body slowly became more controlled, but the structure of the body did not change at the same pace. Materials that could soften contact, such as layered fibers, animal skins, or later woven surfaces, introduced a new element into the experience of rest. These materials did not remove pressure entirely, but they began to redistribute it, spreading weight across a wider area and reducing the intensity at specific points. They also created a barrier between the body and the ground, slowing the loss of heat and allowing muscles to remain more responsive for longer periods. In this way, the environment began to adapt to the body, rather than the body adapting entirely to the environment. However, this shift occurred gradually and unevenly across different groups and periods. For long stretches of human history, many people still slept on surfaces that provided limited support, and even where materials were used, they were often simple and inconsistent. The body, shaped over much longer timescales, retained its existing patterns of response. It continued to shift, to distribute pressure, and to manage discomfort through movement, even when the conditions had begun to improve. This creates an important contrast. The environment becomes more supportive, but the body continues to behave as if support may be incomplete. It does not immediately abandon the patterns developed under earlier conditions. Instead, it carries them forward, applying them even when they are less necessary. This persistence can be observed in modern sleep behavior. Even on surfaces designed to reduce pressure and maintain alignment, the body rarely remains still for an entire night. It continues to turn, adjust, and reposition, following a pattern that reflects older conditions rather than current ones. This suggests that the body's expectations are not based solely on the immediate environment, but on a deeper history of interaction with less stable surfaces. The introduction of supportive materials does change the experience of rest. Pressure is reduced, movements may become less frequent, and the body can remain in certain positions for longer periods. But these changes do not fully replace the underlying system. The body still monitors pressure, still responds to duration, and still initiates movement when thresholds are reached. The difference is that these thresholds may take longer to develop, and the resulting adjustments may be smaller. Over time, this creates a situation in which modern comfort reduces discomfort without eliminating the need for response. The body continues to operate as if it must manage its own support, even when external support is available. This mismatch between the body's patterns and the environment's capabilities becomes more noticeable as conditions improve. The expectation of complete stillness and full comfort during sleep emerges from the environment, but the body's behavior does not fully align with it. Instead, the body remains oriented toward movement, adjustment, and distributed rest. For most of human history, this orientation was necessary. The body had to maintain flexibility in how it rested, because the environment could not guarantee stability. Even as the environment begins to provide more consistent support, the body retains this flexibility, continuing to organize sleep as a process that includes movement rather than as a fixed state. In this way, the transition toward more comfortable sleeping conditions does not erase the earlier patterns. It overlays them, creating a layered experience in which modern support and older responses exist together, shaping how the body continues to rest even when the surface beneath it has changed. As supportive materials became more common, they did not simply reduce pressure, they also began to change the timing of how the body responds to that pressure. When weight is spread more evenly and the surface yields slightly to the shape of the body, the build-up of discomfort takes longer. A position that might have lasted only a short time on firm ground can now be held for a longer interval before signals emerge that require adjustment. This extension of time alters the rhythm of sleep, allowing longer segments of stillness to develop. However, the body does not fully abandon its earlier pattern. It continues to monitor duration, even if the threshold for movement has shifted. The result is a slower version of the same process, where adjustments are less frequent but still present. In earlier human environments, where surfaces offered little adaptation, the timing of movement was closely tied to the immediate buildup of pressure and the gradual effects of cooling. The body responded relatively quickly, shifting positions to prevent discomfort from becoming too intense. With the introduction of materials that reduce these effects, the urgency of movement decreases. The body can remain in one position for longer without reaching the same level of strain. Yet the internal system that tracks time and sensation remains active. It continues to measure how long a position has been held and how conditions are changing within the body. When the extended threshold is finally reached, movement still occurs, guided by the same principles as before. This creates a form of sleep that is both familiar and altered. The structure remains based on segments connected by movement, but the segments themselves become longer and more stable. Over time, this can give the impression of continuous stillness. Even though the underlying pattern has not disappeared, the body is still prepared to adjust. It is simply doing so less often. This change in timing also affects how the body distributes recovery. With longer intervals, certain regions may experience more sustained rest before taking on pressure again. This can improve the sense of ease in those areas, but it does not remove the need for redistribution. Eventually, pressure accumulates even on supportive surfaces, and the body responds by shifting. In modern environments, where materials are designed to match the body's shape more closely, this process becomes more refined. Adjustments may be smaller, and the transitions between positions may be smoother, but the fundamental pattern remains intact. The body continues to organize sleep around duration and response, even when conditions allow for greater stability. This persistence suggests that the body does not redefine sleep entirely in response to improved environments. It modifies its behavior within the same framework, extending the time it can remain still while maintaining the ability to move when needed. The difference lies in degree rather than in kind. For most of human history, the body operated under conditions that required frequent adjustment. As conditions improved, the frequency decreased, but the structure remained. This creates a layered experience in which modern comfort extends the limits of stillness without removing the need for change. The body continues to carry its earlier patterns forward, adapting them to new conditions rather than replacing them. In this way, the introduction of supportive surfaces reshapes the experience of sleep, but it does not fully transform the underlying system that guides how the body rests, adjusts, and maintains continuity across the night. As this extension of stillness becomes more common, it begins to change how the body experiences rest. But it does not fundamentally change how the body functions during sleep. A surface that adapts to the body can delay the buildup of pressure, reduce the rate of heat loss, and allow muscles to release more fully for a time. These changes create longer intervals in which the body can remain still without immediate discomfort. At first, this may give the impression that a stable and lasting position has been found. The body settles, pressure feels evenly distributed, and the need to move seems to fade into the background. However, this condition does not remain fixed. Even on a surface that responds to the body, weight is still present, time continues to pass, and tissues remain under some degree of compression. The difference is not that pressure disappears, but that it develops more slowly. Over time, the same process begins again. Areas that have been in contact for longer periods begin to register subtle changes. Circulation shifts slightly, tissues become less responsive, and the sense of balance that once felt stable begins to weaken. These changes are gradual and because they unfold more slowly, they often remain outside immediate awareness. But the body continues to monitor them. The system that tracks duration, pressure, and alignment remains active, even when the environment is more supportive. In earlier human conditions, this system operated under more intense constraints. The ground provided little adaptation, and discomfort developed quickly, requiring frequent adjustments. In modern environments, the same system operates under reduced pressure, but it does not turn off. Instead, it stretches its timing. Movements occur less often, but they still occur. The body continues to shift, even when the need is not obvious. This creates a pattern in which sleep appears more stable, but remains structured around the same underlying process. The expectation that the body should remain completely still throughout the night does not align with this structure. Stillness is extended, but not permanent. Movement remains part of how the body maintains balance over time. Without it, even supportive surfaces would eventually create uneven pressure or prolonged compression in certain areas. The body anticipates this outcome and responds before it becomes pronounced. In doing so, it preserves continuity of rest. This persistence of movement, even in comfortable conditions, reflects a deeper history. For most of human existence, the body could not rely on its environment to provide consistent support. It developed a way of resting that included adjustment as a necessary component. When the environment improved, that system did not disappear. It adapted, operating more slowly and with less urgency, but still guiding the body through a sequence of positions across the night. This is why, even in conditions designed for comfort, the body does not fully settle into a single posture. It continues to move not because something is wrong, but because it is following a pattern that has long allowed it to maintain rest within changing conditions. The result is a form of sleep that combines extended stillness with periodic adjustment, where comfort is increased but not absolute, and where the body continues to rely on movement as a way to sustain balance over time rather than expecting the environment to hold that balance for it indefinitely. As the night comes toward its final stretch, the pattern that has been unfolding quietly from the beginning remains unchanged in its structure. Even if the body feels more settled than before, the body has moved through multiple positions, redistributed pressure across different regions, and balanced periods of partial release with moments of renewed contact. Yet there is no single point at which it arrives at a position that can be held without limit. Even in the last hours of rest, the same process continues, though often with less intensity as the body has already spread its exposure across many areas. What becomes more noticeable is not the absence of discomfort, but the way the body has learned to organize it across time. Each region has carried its share of pressure and then released it, allowing another to take its place. In this way, the experience of sleeping in pain is not concentrated in a single moment or location. It is distributed, managed, and repeated in cycles that allow the body to continue resting despite the conditions it cannot fully control. In earlier human environments, this final phase of the night would not have been different in kind from the beginning. The ground remained the same, and the body continued to respond to it in the same way. There was no gradual movement toward perfect stillness or complete relief. Instead, the body maintained its pattern of adjustment until waking occurred. The idea of reaching a final, stable position that could be held without change would not have matched the conditions under which the body had adapted. Even when fatigue accumulated and the body was deeply at rest, the underlying need to respond to pressure and alignment remained. This continuity suggests that sleep is not a process that resolves itself into stillness, but one that maintains balance through ongoing variation. In modern environments where surfaces can support the body more effectively and reduce the intensity of pressure, the later stages of sleep may feel more stable. Movements may become less frequent, and the body may remain in certain positions for longer periods. However, the same structure persists. The body continues to monitor duration and sensation, and it continues to adjust when necessary. The difference lies in how slowly these changes develop, not in whether they occur. This persistence highlights a deeper aspect of how the body relates to rest. It does not expect the environment to provide a perfect condition that can be held without change. It expects variation, and it prepares to respond to it. Even when that variation is reduced, the system remains in place, guiding the body through the final hours of sleep in the same way it guided the earlier ones. As morning approaches, the body may return to positions that feel more familiar or balanced, but these are not permanent solutions. They are part of the same sequence, shaped by the same need to distribute pressure and maintain alignment over time. In this sense, the end of sleep does not mark the resolution of discomfort, but the continuation of a process that has been unfolding throughout the night. The body wakes not from a state of perfect stillness, but from a series of adjustments that have allowed rest to occur within limits. This suggests that the experience of sleeping in pain is not something that belonged only to the past. It reflects a pattern that continues to shape how the body rests today, even in environments designed to reduce its effects. The body does not seek a single position without discomfort. It moves through many positions, each one temporary, each one part of a larger process that allows rest to exist alongside the conditions that cannot be fully removed. As the body moves through these final intervals of rest, another detail becomes more apparent, one that is less about pressure or temperature, and more about how the body carries its patterns into waking. The adjustments that have taken place through the night do not end suddenly when sleep fades. The body emerges from rest in a position that reflects the last stage of its ongoing sequence, not a position that has been held long enough to become fixed. This means that the body does not wake from a state of complete stillness, but from a state that is already in motion, even if that motion is subtle. The muscles that were engaged to maintain alignment begin to release, while others may still hold slight tension from the last position. Circulation continues to adjust, redistributing itself after periods of compression and relief. The spine, which has shifted through multiple alignments during the night, returns gradually to the patterns required for standing and movement. In earlier human environments where the ground remained firm and uneven, this transition would have been direct. There was no clear boundary between the conditions of sleep and the conditions of waking. The body moved from one to the other without a change in surface or support. The same ground that shaped the night continued to shape the first moments of movement in the morning. This continuity meant that the body did not reset into a completely neutral state at the end of rest. It carried forward the effects of pressure, alignment, and adjustment into the beginning of the day. Any stiffness, imbalance, or residual sensation from the night was not separate from the environment. It was part of the same interaction that had been ongoing for hours. Over time, this would have reinforced a pattern in which the body does not expect a clear separation between rest and movement. Instead, it moves between them gradually, carrying information from one state into the other. In modern environments, where surfaces can reduce the intensity of pressure and provide more consistent support, this transition may feel smoother, but it is not entirely different in structure. People may still notice that the body feels slightly uneven or that certain areas require movement before they feel fully at ease. This suggests that the body continues to emerge from sleep in a state shaped by the positions it has taken, rather than from a perfectly neutral alignment. The persistence of this pattern indicates that sleep does not erase the conditions it occurs within. It manages them, redistributes them, and carries their effects forward. This also changes how the idea of recovery can be understood. Recovery does not mean returning to a state without any trace of the night. It means maintaining function despite those traces, allowing the body to move, balance, and respond even after periods of pressure and adjustment. For most of human history, this would have been the normal outcome of rest. The body did not expect to wake without any residual effects of its interaction with the ground. It expected to continue from where it had been, adjusting again as movement resumed. In this way, the final moments of sleep do not resolve the patterns that have shaped the night. They extend them into waking, connecting rest and activity through the same underlying system. The body does not separate these states completely. It moves between them, carrying forward the results of its ongoing effort to maintain balance within conditions that are never entirely stable. As the body completes this final transition from rest into waking, the full structure of the night begins to reveal itself more clearly. Sleep has not been a single, stable state, and it has not been a complete escape from discomfort. Instead, it has unfolded as a sequence of small adjustments, each one shaped by the limits of the body and the surface beneath it. Throughout the night, pressure has formed and been released, positions have been taken and then left behind, and the body has moved between partial states of rest rather than settling into a single, lasting one. What remains at the end is not a perfect alignment, but a balance that has been maintained over time through constant, quiet change. In earlier human environments, this pattern would not have been an exception. It would have been the normal structure of sleep. The ground did not provide a stable or adaptive surface, and the body could not rely on it to remove pressure or maintain comfort. Instead, the body learned to work within these limits. It allowed certain sensations to remain, adjusted when they grew too strong, and continued resting through a series of positions that were each only temporarily sustainable. Pain, in this context, was not a single continuous experience. It was something that appeared, shifted, and returned in different forms across the body, never fully disappearing, but never overwhelming the entire process of rest. Over long periods of time, this created a way of sleeping that did not depend on the absence of discomfort. It depended on the ability to move within it. As conditions improved and surfaces became more supportive, the intensity of this experience changed, but its structure remained. The body still carries the same distribution of weight, the same points of pressure, and the same need to respond to duration. It may take longer for discomfort to build, and movements may become less frequent, but the underlying system continues to guide how rest unfolds. The expectation that sleep should be completely still and entirely free from sensation does not fully match this deeper pattern. Even in modern conditions, the body continues to shift, to adjust, and to search for balance. This suggests that the goal of sleep has never been to eliminate all discomfort, but to manage it in a way that allows rest to continue. The body does not wait for a perfect position. It works with the positions it can sustain for a time, moving between them as needed. This creates a form of rest that is flexible rather than fixed, shaped by the interaction between body and environment rather than by a single ideal state. As the body wakes, it carries the result of this process forward. It does not emerge from a state of complete stillness, but from a sequence of changes that have allowed it to rest within limits. The question that remains is not why discomfort has been present during sleep, but why the body has been able to rest despite it, and whether the search for a completely pain-free night was ever part of how human sleep was meant to work.